like to take a moment and welcome everyone to our monthly Business Builder Speaker Series. This was an idea born out of the COVID days when we couldn't get together in person. We said, let's get together the third Wednesday every month at 1 o'clock. We'll bring on a speaker on a topic that we think is important and valuable to the community that we serve. So it's an opportunity, and we've carried it forward coming up on 4 years now since started in COVID in 2000. It's an opportunity, third Wednesday every month at 1 o'clock, to get some new tips and tricks from industry professionals.
Awesome.
We want to thank you for joining us. We appreciate you giving us your time. We encourage you to get connected. We're on all the socials. Everything is listed there. And by connecting with us, you'll be on the list for upcoming Business Builder Speaker Series, for CE classes, and for other things that we make available to the real estate agent community that we serve. Next month, our topic will be June 19th. That's the third Wednesday at 1 p.m. We're going to have Ryan Moore from Market Valuation Services talking about what real estate agents need to know about appraisals, learn how appraisals work, how they combine logical data and subjective measures, learn how time, home quality, and condition affect appraised values, and learn the subjective items regarding what adds value and what does not. So we invite you to join us Wednesday, June 19th at 1 o'clock. And today, thank you for giving us your time to make the most of your time. We encourage you to ask questions. You can go either pop off of the microphone or use the chat box, and we raise your hand and we'll field some questions. And at this point, it is my honor and privilege to introduce Alan Christian, team leader of the Alan Christian Mortgage Team, to talk about the pending disaster with a divorce and how it affects your own, and to learn the 3 things that a real estate agent needs to know about divorce. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to Alan and take it from here.
Brother, thank you. Thank you. And I want to say again, for anybody new that's getting on here, y'all truly set the stage for me in closings. And as a closing attorney, it is truly about a partnership. Everything that we do together, me as the lender, broker, working with the realtors, working with the closing attorney, everybody involved in the transaction, it is truly a team effort. And the things that y'all do, it's not just about closing the transaction. It's about the partnership. If we need help with anything, and on these things definitely come up, it's also about how we promote each other in the process. And you guys have just done phenomenal. And I thoroughly, thoroughly appreciate it. So think about yourself as the realtor in this transaction, and you get a phone call from a client. Let's say that you know them. Let's say it's a couple. They call you on a Monday and say that we're thinking about selling our house. Love for you to come over, talk to us, give us an analysis, and you do all of your cool stuff that you do. You go over to the house on a Thursday, sign the listing agreement, get all the paperwork together, it goes live. And that night, you get a full price offer on the home. You get it accepted Friday morning, contract signed, signatures in, you are off to the races. And then you find out that afternoon, let's just say the wife files for divorce. What happens? Who knows? And I'm going to ask, and I want some interaction from folks. So tell me what your thoughts are on this. Anybody got some ideas? Bobby, talk to me. Randy, take your spit. I'm going to call on y'all because I love these. I love doing these because I get to see my friends. I get to make some new ones. People talk to me. So tell me what happens. You go in and this happens. You've already listed, you're under contract. And all of a sudden, they file for divorce. You know what takes place? Chris, talk to me, brother. Go, brother.
I'm sorry. I thought you were saying something there.
No, tell me.
Yeah. So pump the brakes, first of all, and contact the attorney to see what's been filed.
Yep.
It is the first thing I would do.
Yep. Anything else? But truly, as soon as you find out that they have filed for divorce, everything is on hold. Everything is on hold for maybe a month, maybe 2 years. You have no idea what can potentially take place. So a few things, just going to kind of run through some thoughts, and please ask questions as I go through this.
Alan, real quickly, I see Randy Watts has his hand up.
Oh,
Go
I didn't
ahead,
see
Randy.
it. Go, Randy.
Oh, I was just going to answer your question. You kind of called on me, and
Hit
great,
it, brother. Tell me.
great to see you guys. Thanks for doing this. I think you already answered it, but you have to stop because whatever the divorce attorney, if they have filed or are about to file, will set the stage for everything on that transaction. So you are not able to accept that, I guess, legally, is might not be the right term, but
Yep.
it won't be fully executed correctly if you go ahead with that contract. So
Yeah, you're exactly right. You're gonna run into major problems with it. So I'm gonna run through a few things. And these are things when you go on the listing appointment that you just need to listen to. It's an uncomfortable thing to go meet a couple and you're going to go in for a listing appointment and say, hey, tell me about the house. But you need to find out, why are you moving? Are they getting a bigger home, downsizing, whatever? And then every once in a while, they may not tell you. They may not, but you need to listen for it and find out what the plans are. Can a couple sell a house? Can they sell a house, sell it, if they've already filed for divorce? If they agree to it, can they go in and sell the house? Do you know that this was kind of surprising to me? Because here's the answer. They go in and file for divorce. This can present all kinds of problems because normally assets are frozen while while a couple is going through a divorce. They can't unload any marital assets. They can't go sell a car, a motorcycle, a boat. They can't do anything. So typically that home is frozen and they can't do anything with that home while the divorce is pending. And how long will that take? Once again, I've helped people that took 6 weeks and they were done. I've had others that took 2 solid years to go in and do something. There's a rare circumstance, and I'm talking needle in a haystack, that if you get both attorneys to agree in writing that it is okay to actually sell that home, then they can actually go in and do that. But I'm telling you, it's a very hard thing to be able to do. Next question on this one is, can they refinance the loan while the divorce is in process? Who knows the answer to this one? And then here's the one, why would they want to refinance? And there's a couple thoughts on this. And you got to think about a couple that that has gone through a divorce and they're right in the middle of it. A couple of reasons to refinance: if they need to get one of the spouses off of the loan, if they're both on there, they want to get them off. They may need to get cash out of that house to pay off the soon to be ex. They may need to get cash out to pay attorney's fees. I had a couple that I helped recently that I know his attorney's fees were $272,000 and hers were $284,000. And where's that come from? So sometimes it's coming from the equity of the home, but they cannot refinance while the divorce is in process. And Becky, I'm going to call on you if you'll pull off your speaker, because Becky's my loan partner, and I drive the race car and I'm phenomenal at it, but Becky's like my head mechanic and she's brilliant, but they can't refinance. And there's a couple of reasons why they can't go in and refinance while it's in process. Becky, why don't you answer this?
Well, the reason why they can't refinance, because it's now a standing order with the court that a filing has been made publicly at the county courthouse, and so now all assets are frozen. So on a refinance, the title company is not going to agree to provide clear title and provide lender title insurance, which is required for a lender to close on the loan. The reason for this is the title company is concerned that the divorce court could change their mind or could lean toward one spouse versus the other spouse. Let's say the husband refinances and the court says, no, we're going to give the full title to the property to the wife. So
Right.
then the husband refinanced for no reason at all. So title companies completely stop the brakes for a lender where we can't close until the judge has signed and filed the final judgment.
Yep. So if they're wanting to do it midstream, and these are all questions that, if they tell you you're going through a refinance, these are things that I'm going to ask when I talk to them on the phone. But same thing when you get into this, and I'll tell you, you're going to be a counselor. You're a realtor, but these are the ones. There's a reason divorce attorneys get paid by the hour, because there's a lot of time involved. But this is one of those where you're literally holding a couple's hand. I've cried on the phone with couples. I've cried with them. I've kept some people off the ledge. I mean, this is one of the hardest things to do, but it's also one of the most special ones when you can help them through this season. It stinks, but it's the reality. And some of the things that you ask when you go through this is, who's planning to keep the house? Who's planning to stay? Is one going to stay in the house? Do they need to refinance and to get one off of it? Is the one that's going to be refinanced off? Let's say it's the husband. Is he going to move into an apartment for a while? Is he going to move in his mom's basement for a while? Is he going to go in and buy something? And we had somebody do that just recently. It was actually a friend of mine, and I knew him, and he called, says, hey, we're going through a divorce. We filed. It took him 6 weeks start to finish. She was keeping the house. He was going to buy something new. So he came to me to do the loan for the new house that they were buying. She was supposed to be doing the refinance. They had already finished out their divorce, so it had been signed off on. And he went and made an offer on the house. Our loan was approved, subject to pending her finishing her cash out refinance to pay him his whatever $200,000 of equity. He went under contract on a new place with a 30-day closing. And I called the listing agent and talked to the listing agent, and it was actually the seller was a flipping a property. And I talked to him as well and told him, hey, we're taking the contract, but I need you to understand what's happening. The ex has already got a refinance in process with somebody else, big bank. So we're just pending, and it was supposed to be finished in about 2 weeks. Well, that 2 weeks turned into 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks. We got a 30-day contract on a closing, and we're having to be back on the phone nonstop. So you don't know that ex that's got a loan somewhere else, if she's going to be able to actually get that loan, how long it's going to take. Is it going to take 30 days? Going to take 6 or 7 weeks? Or will she potentially delay it intentionally to screw him so he can't buy something? And these are all things that you think, does this really happen? And it actually does. I've seen spouses let a house specifically go into foreclosure to flat out screw the other one in the process. I mean, it's a big deal.
Sick.
It is. I mean, it's just crazy. I've also, and I had this recently happen with somebody, and these are just things to know about, to talk with clients. When you're thinking about, helping them buy a new one, somebody I know got divorced, and he was not living in the house anymore. Mortgage was in both of their names. She was in the house, and his divorce attorney told him to stop making the mortgage payment because he wasn't living there. She was. Let her make the mortgage payment. So they finished out the divorce whenever 6 months later got finished. And he called me about getting approved for a loan. Guess what shows up? feedback, thoughts. He had 3 late payments on a mortgage. Can he qualify?
No.
Chris?
No.
Chris?
No.
No. I mean, so did she jack him? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
She knew exactly what she was doing. She jacked him. So he had late payments. Just flat out just jacked in the process. So let's talk about qualifying for a loan. So let's say the wife wants to, buy a new place, sell the house. She needs to get a loan. These are some things for the alimony and child support. It has to last for at least 3 years for us to be able to use that income. So it's got to be in the divorce decree that this income, alimony, sometimes alimony is only for a year, 2 years, but it's got to be for at least 3 years. If it's a one-time lump sum payment, that changes things. If there's child support there, it's got to be for 3 years, and you got to be careful to ask about the ages of the students, or ask about the age of the kids, because, if they're high school students, whatever, and they're about to graduate or in 2 years or so, that income that you think they may be able to use, they may not be able to use, and it could cause a problem. Also, if they're planning to use the income from alimony and child support to qualify for the next home, they have to have received those payments for 6 months. So you go on a listing agreement. They're going to sell the house, or she's going to stay there and she's going to wait and qualify to buy the next home. You're going to list it, and then she's going to buy the next one. But when can she get a loan? After she's had 6 months of straight payments that's documented that he's been paying alimony and child support 6 months, and only then. So once they file for divorce, you're looking at least 6 months out for that to take place. Now, here's the flip side for the guy. How many times do you think the guy is aware of this, and on month 5, he doesn't pay her? So now we don't have 6 months of payments. So then all of a sudden we run into another potential problem. So that's some things you've got to find out. On the refinancing, normally when they're refinancing, they're trying to get one of the spouses off. And I had this happen recently. Spouse wanted to stay in the home, but she didn't make enough money to qualify. She doesn't want to, disrupt the kids. She wants to stay in the same house, same neighborhood, same support systems, same schools. So it's not uncommon that she'll refinance, and she may bring the parents in to co-sign. Sometimes she can qualify, but the outside payments are too much. And sometimes I've told this to people recently. If you need to pull out $200,000 to pay your husband off for his equity, and you want to stay in the home, but it's really going to be tight, but you're only planning to stay there for about 3 years till the kids get out of school. Well, when you're doing a cash out refi, pull out an extra $30,000 in addition to what you're using to pay your husband off. Stick that in a side account. And then if you need to pull out $300 a month or $400 a month to make up the differential of what you're comfortable paying, you can use that extra money to make up that difference in your budget each month. Now, granted, you've added to your balance and everything, but if it allows you a strategy or a way to stay in that home for the next maybe 2, 3, 4 years until the kids get out, and then maybe you're going to downsize and move somewhere else, there's some ways around that. But a lot of times people they don't talk this stuff through. They call a divorce attorney. They say, hey, just call anybody. And if they just call any Tom, Dick, and Harry, they're not thinking step 1, 2, 3, and 4, or layers 1, 2, 3, and 4. Tell me what you're trying to accomplish. Tell me what you're looking to do. And if she wants to stay there, are there ways to potentially go in and do this to try to keep her in that house? Because you want to keep it as stable as possible. So here's when the divorce is final, just so people know. Until that judge signs off on it. So you want to go in and list that house. You want to accept a contract. You want to say, when can we move forward? When can we think about closing? Once they agree for the divorce, it's still got to be signed off by the judge. That could take a week. That could take 3 weeks. Depending on their schedule, it could take 2 months. So as the realtor, when you're thinking about going in and listing that property, helping them find a new one, and then do you want to go write a contract or just say, hey, where are you going to live in the interim? And sometimes that's a part of the conversation. We've got, step 1, 2, 3, and 4, but until that divorce is final, in the way that I operate, I don't allow surprises. Or like the one I mentioned recently, if there's a wild card, as in we got to refinance with the spouse taking place, and it should be done in 2 weeks, we are crystal clear with everybody involved what we're waiting on. And as long as everybody's on the same page, then it's going to be okay. But you've got to be very clear when you're talking to your clients, and you just got to know if this starts and takes place, it may be a smooth transaction. It may be a disaster. I've had folks that, I know people that have burned the house down. I know I had a client somebody I knew took their life in the middle of it, and they've got a contract, or they're in the middle of this. So as the realtor going into it, these are one of the most emotional ones that can happen, but they're also some of the most heartfelt things you can go through, because these are the ones that when, we call, if you call as a realtor, or as I call as a lender, instead of calling and giving them an update on the loan or update on the contract or the house, these are the ones where you call randomly and just ask and check in. How are you doing? How are you surviving this process? And there are times that they may end up selling the house and just moving into an apartment, not buying anything. It may be a 2-year window. They don't do anything. But these are the ones that if you'll take your time and hold people's hands through this, all of a sudden you'll end up helping them down the road. But they're the ones that will look back and always remember, this was not just about a transaction. This was just not about a house. This was helping somebody walk through this process. And yeah, there's good business that comes from it, because they realize you're calling, and it's not about the money anymore. It's everything else. Other thoughts?
Alan, let me jump in with one
Yeah,
thought
man.
real quickly. We were talking about this scenario about you're ready to sign the listing agreement, sign the contract, and they file for divorce. I've had several agents tell me that I'm working with sellers who they acknowledge to each other, we're going to get divorced. And I always ask the agent, have they filed yet or not? And if they haven't filed, can they wait to file until after the home sale is complete? And
Yes.
some, for a variety of circumstances, no, we can't wait. We have to file now. And I explain what the process will be like, working through the divorce court approval to get the sale. But
Right.
I've had others who, yeah, we know it's coming, but we won't file until we complete the sale. And although it was sad, it was kind of humorous that the wife signed first. When we have divorces and agents let us know that the divorce situation, we always offer to sign the parties, different locations, different times.
Right.
The husband was signing last, and he told us at closing, this is the last step. Once this house is sold, my wife and I can file for divorce. And he said, when this is done, you're going to hear me scream like you've never heard a man scream before. He said, it's going to shatter glass. And it turned into like the end of Shawshank Redemption, when Andy Dufresne was standing in the parking lot in the pouring rain.
Yes.
And that's what this gentleman, he went out in the parking lot in the pouring rain, put his arms out, and was screaming as loud as he could scream, because they'd sold the house and now they were ready to file divorce.
Yep. It happens. And that's why I say part of my promotion when I talk to people is, if you feel like this is pending or this is coming, your first conversation, I always say you need to get the money and your financial house in order first before you call your divorce attorney. Because when you call your divorce attorney, let me just tell you real clearly, they may know their world related to the divorce. They don't know jack crap about selling a house or anything related to a mortgage. Therein lies the statement of, hey, just don't make your mortgage payment. So when they're thinking this is coming, and I've had folks call me, I've had folks call me, and it's a small niche that I didn't think that I would be in, but as I've shared a little bit more about it, they've just found out you call your divorce attorney, they're going to charge you $375 to $500 an hour just to have the conversation here. And half the time they don't know what to do. And there's some very specific steps. So if you're going to work through and it's an amicable situation, sometimes they do want to go ahead and say, let's go ahead and refinance, get somebody removed off of the mortgage, do the cash out, whatever. Then here's the thing that comes up, and Doug, you can answer this because I've had them say, hey, why don't you go ahead and sign off on the warranty deed and just go ahead and sign it over to me? And one of the soon-to-be ex-spouses is thinking, should I do that or should I not? You sign that house over, you're jacked. But there is an exact process, and it's about having crystal clear communication. It's about both parties trying to do the best they can about being good for their word. And you've got to be very clear. When are we going to sell the house? How are we going to determine the price of the house? How are we going to determine who's going to make the decision if one says the house is worth X and the other says it's worth something different? Because sometimes they don't want top dollar. Sometimes they want a lower dollar amount because that means they're going to do a less payout to the other. So if a spouse is going to stay in the home and the home is truly worth $500,000, they may say, well, no, I don't agree with that. And I'm not willing to sell it for that because it's not worth it. And they want to do it for $450,000. But the one staying there knows, well, if I do that, then I'm going to have more money on my end of the table. So it is about being clear on the front end. How are we going to handle this? Who's going to stay in the house? How do we agree upon the payout? If we don't agree upon the number, how's that going to be held? Who signs off on the deed? At what point? I've had people, Doug, you said this, it's not uncommon when the divorce is taking place and they're doing the refinance or even doing a closing on it, that they're in two separate rooms. And I've had spouses say, I will not under any circumstance sign off on that warranty deed until her stuff is signed or vice versa, because there's a small time that they've signed over their rights to that property. It can open up a can of worms. So there are some very specific steps to go through that. And it's, once again, it's just knowing what some of these pieces are and having these conversations of, do they need to be in the same room? I mean, I had one, there was a sheriff at the closing, a sheriff standing out in the hallway because of domestic violence. While they were there at the same time, gosh, Doug, bring them at 10 o'clock in the morning. The other come at 4. You don't want them there at the same time. But they didn't think about that. So all of these little things like this are vital. But once again, from a business perspective as a realtor, this is good business. Once again, hard to say. You can get great. When somebody calls me and they're going through a divorce, they don't even ask questions. They're like, I hate them. I want you to bury her, bury him. I want you to get this thing sold, get me in the next house. They don't care. And it sometimes can be some of the easiest business in the process as well. But you got to be their friend and you got to hold their hand. And yeah, you take a lot more calls on these. And it's important for us. When I mentioned about my friend that went through this and his soon-to-be ex was doing a loan with another bank that got delayed almost 2 months, it's important for us that if I'm helping one of them buy the new place since they're exiting the marital home, if I'm able to do both of those loans, then I can control that process. So if we're doing the refi for the spouse staying in the home, then I'm also in full knowledge of exact process of when can we close and purchase the new one. So we're in control of that, and that helps both of them. Sometimes they don't want to do that because they think I'm the enemy because I'm helping the other. But many, many times they understand that this is going to make it as easy as possible for both of y'all. Because if they go somewhere else, it's a wild card. You have no idea what's going to take place in the process. So, any questions, thoughts on it? I know we're about 30 minutes or so. Doug, tell me your experience. Good stuff, bad stuff, normally smooth or what? Because this is all about pre-planning. going into this?
There are a couple of things that I always remind people, no matter what happens in real estate, every issue in real estate can be fixed with the
Yep.
right amount of money or the right piece of paper.
Right.
The right
Right.
amount of money, the right piece of paper will fix any real estate issue. And so usually half the time it's figuring out what's the right amount of money, who gets it, and who has to sign what piece of paper.
That's right.
The other thing that you'd mentioned earlier, and this is where having a good closing attorney helping you out comes into play, and that's the parties who are already leery of each other and who has to sign first. And I explained the process of the closing attorney holding everything in escrow. You're signing this deed, but it doesn't mean anything until everyone has signed and we have all the money. I'm not going to take this deed and use it until we're ready to close. And we had one that we just closed, I believe it was Wednesday last week, but we had to get the ex-husband to sign a quitclaim deed in advance of closing. And we explained that process, that although he was signing a quitclaim deed to his ex-wife a week before closing,
Yep.
we would not use it until she was in a position to complete the home sale and pay off the mortgage. And we were able to make them comfortable.
And that's where they
our
say,
role.
sure, you won't. Because I don't, that's the thing, Doug, that I have run into. We're closing with an attorney. I don't know the attorney, and you tell me you're not going to, but heck, the government told me something too, and they did something different. That's one of the pieces. If I said, here's the top 3 or 4 things that have been challenges, is a extremely paranoid, spouse that said, you want me to sign over my rights to this a week in advance, and you're telling me you won't do something. How do I know you won't? Because what if an unscrupulous attorney got him to sign it and then actually went in and recorded it? He's now got no rights to that property, and there's another suit taking place in the divorce. Am I correct on that? Because and maybe I'm wrong, but or maybe you can answer, because that is one of the things that comes up pretty regularly when this happens.
That's one of the nice things about being a real estate attorney, is not being a divorce. One of the many pluses to being a real estate attorney is not being a divorce attorney.
Yeah.
But when I have people like that, there are ways to make them comfortable. Whether it's a written escrow agreement. I've even had them sign it and have their divorce attorney hold it. And it's like, I will get it from the divorce attorney the day of closing. It's a funding condition. There's usually some way to work things out and to, show what's the chain of custody, who's in control of this. And even though you've signed a document, how do you know that you're protected? And there's usually a way to make that happen. And last ditch scenario, this gentleman I'd mentioned, I had him sign the quitclaim a week in advance. And if he wouldn't, well, the other option is come to closing. I'll put you in a different room, different time, different office.
And bring a sheriff.
But we will we'll do everything simultaneously, essentially, in a safe way.
Yeah. Yeah. And then watch them both leave the park line together. So I'm going to do the flip side now. You're dealing with a client as a realtor, and you go write an offer on a house and you get the contract accepted. And then you find out the next day they just filed for divorce. And it may take 6 months for them to finish their divorce out. If that, as the buyer, they are under contract. What happens then? Who's liable? Who's liable for performance? Can they potentially be sued for performance? Are the realtor's commissions involved? Or, you'd like to think that they back out and say, okay, but the rare circumstance, your client goes under contract and it's accepted and they give earnest money. Maybe they do an appraisal, maybe they do an inspection, and 2 weeks later it hits the fan and one of them goes and files. What happens then? Doug, I just literally, as I'm sitting here, I just thought of that. What's the answer? I'll catch you on the spot. Do you know?
The buyer still. Oh, go ahead, Doug.
I'll give you two answers. First, usually they use GAR, Georgia Association of Realtors contract.
Yep.
And the buyer, if the seller can't convey clear title, that's a seller breach. The remedy for a seller breach for the buyer, there are only two. One is give me my earnest money back and terminate the agreement. So that's option one. Option two, the buyer always has the right to sue the seller for specific performance and say, I'm willing to wait. And if I have to go to court to sue both of you and force the sale, the buyer has the legal right to sue for specific performance.
Right.
But those are really the buyer's only two options.
Mhm.
And I know some of these truly are needle in a haystack, but it's something that you do need to know about. Does it come up? And I see that more in the fact of if you take a listing, having these conversations that you need to understand, if you accept a contract, you can be sued for performance. How many people are going to go that far? It's rare, but can it happen? Absolutely it can. Normally it won't, but it is something that they need to be aware of, that if y'all go in and do this, then it actually can actually take place. So
I have a question.
yes, absolutely.
Doug, when the buyer sues the seller for specific performance, does that cloud the title on the property to the point where the seller can't sell to anyone else?
That's correct. The first thing that the attorney does when they file a suit for specific performance is they file a lis pendens. A lis pendens is a notice that litigation has commenced against the seller affecting title to the property, and it prevents them from selling it to anyone else until that's resolved.
So now the seller is motivated to resolve the suit and not let it sit in court forever.
That's right. It's an open lawsuit where the buyer is merely seeking the benefit of their contract bargain. They're not out for penalties and damages. They're saying, just do what you promised to do in the contract. Sell it to me at this price.
Yep. It's rare, but it's just something to be aware of. So this goes back to as a realtor, and a lot of times just as a listing agent, it's asking the questions. It's being crystal clear when you go in on a listing agreement to listen. Sometimes they will tell you right up front, hey, we're about to go through a divorce. Sometimes they won't. Sometimes they don't tell us, and we find out, oh yeah, we filed for divorce 3 days ago, and we've already got the loan in process. And all of a sudden, all the brakes were on, even though we asked the questions, but things come up. But it's just listening on the front end. If they tell you this is the perfect case of why, on our side, why I want to talk to them as soon as possible on the front end to work, because this is the team aspect more than anything. We need to find out what is their plan. What's plan A, B, C, and D? Are they going to stay there? Is he going to live in the basement? Are they going to move into an apartment as he is? Who's going to make, how is all of this going to take place? What's the perfect situation? Do you want to stay there? Can you qualify? Yes or no? And sometimes they don't even have a clue. They think, well, oh yeah, I can qualify. And sometimes they can't. Well, then can we bring mom and dad in or bring somebody else in? How can we figure out a way for you to qualify to stay in the home? That's number one. Then number two, if he wants to buy something, can he? So before you put that house on the market, you need to know. So they have a plan, and it does need to be plan A, B, and C. You need to always have a backup. So that's why it's so important on the front end to have these conversations. And if you find out, hey, we've not filed, we're about to, I'm not sure, and you can tell if it's teetering. Sometimes it's teetering and something happens 3 days later that sets it off the chart, and one of them goes and files. You just need to know about it. And it should be a part of, if you've got your checklist of things to cover if there's a divorce taking place, what are some of these very specific questions to have so that you can walk them through them? Once again, sometimes it's not that big of a deal. Sometimes it's nasty. But these are the ones that It's not a transaction. This is an extremely emotional time, and it's a time to stop and listen and help them emotionally just get through this season of life to the next stage and just get through. And a lot of times the phone calls, it's going to be 30 seconds about the contractor, about the house, and the rest of it's going to be just keeping them sane to get to the next day to get this stuff finished out. So anyway, any questions? And this is all very important stuff to be aware of on the front end to just mitigate challenges, down the road. It's all about proper expectations, proper communication, crystal clear. So when things do come up, if you've already addressed them and had the conversation, it's going to protect everybody in the process.
Hey, Alan, I got one for you.
Yeah.
Or Jenny, go ahead. Okay.
That's okay. Go ahead.
So, on the flip side of that too, you want to be careful too with once a divorce has been filed and you learn that there was a divorce. And a situation that I'm working through right now, and it's going to end up on the positive side, but it did not start that way. There was an online divorce that was filed. And in that online divorce, the house was not divided or was not put into the decree in who got what. The husband is in jail, and the wife assumed that she could go ahead and just sell the house. So she had two previous real estate agents that had went to put this property on the market, and unfortunately, the conditions of the house was not in the best of shape. They could not sell it. If they were even able to put it on the contract and sell this property, they still could not have, because it was deeded to a company that actually was helping the wife get out of a foreclosure situation where the husband didn't even know.
Wow.
So this might be another step into, part 2 of this series, but I will tell you that this is the second one in 2 years that I have personally dealt with. But again, even when you take on somebody's property and you hear a word about a divorce, first things first, mirror up with that real estate attorney, put the money up for a title. Most real estate agents will work with you, real estate attorneys will work with you with that, but it's amazing. So this mess has been going on for 6 months. We're finally kind of through it, but turns out that the woman who went to sign the contract with us and want to sell the house and do everything else had no idea that she didn't even own the property.
Wow. Yeah.
So something to be careful there.
It's just all about communication. I will tell you one of the funny ones. I was at a closing and my client couple were buying a house, and I can't remember the exact scenario, but the folks across the table, he was divorced, was there with his new girlfriend, something, whatever, but he had to sign something that showed his aliases. She didn't know he had been married before and found out at the closing table when he had to fill one of those, or he did it. It was actually for her. And I remember the attorney looked up and says, Alan, y'all want to get out and go get some coffee? And we left. And it was just one of those just funny, but very uncomfortable situations. But once again, it's just about asking the right questions, listening. And if something pops up that you're not sure about, waiting a week or thinking it's going to be okay is always a recipe for disaster. If something comes up and you're not sure, you pick up the phone and call Doug's office, call us, whoever's involved, and get a very solid answer on what it is. Because waiting, just on anything, and especially this, waiting and guessing and saying, I think it's okay, normally saying, I think it's going to be okay, winds up not being. And it ends up, you find out about all this stuff about a week and a half before closing, right? Yep. Becky, anything else?
The only tidbit I would throw in there, but which is very rare, is when you have a couple that got divorced and they had a 3% mortgage, and they wanted to stay in the house. I said, look, I can't refinance it. I just want to make the payments because you're paying me alimony or child support and or both. But it's going to,
good point.
The other spouse can obviously move out and rent, and if the wife makes the payments on time for 12 consecutive months, and we show checks that the wife made the payments, for 12 consecutive months, we don't have to count that obligation against the husband on his new house if he's willing to wait a year.
Did y'all follow that? That's I had that down and I missed it. That's huge. Spouses in the house, or they're in the house and they got a 3% interest rate. If they refinance and they have to refinance to take the other one off of the mortgage, but that rate's going to go from 3 to, let's just say 7. The payment's going to go up $800 to $1,000 a month. And then she can't qualify, can't do it, budget won't work, whatever. If he's willing, and we've had this happen before. He's like, well, I'll move out, I'll get an apartment, whatever. You make the payment for 12 months. And then after we have 12 months of documented payments, even though he's on that mortgage, we can use those documented payments to offset the mortgage payment so that he potentially can qualify for the next home. He's still on there for liability, and you pray to God she does it. But I have had that happen. I had a couple one time, good friend of mine, he went through a divorce and was supposed to refinance and get her off the loan, but he couldn't qualify. It took him 3.5 years to get his life back together and get his income in a certain place to where he could qualify to get her specifically removed from the mortgage. But she was able to buy something because we documented that he was actually making the payment. They were both on it. But it took 3 years for him to be able to refinance because she still wanted to be completely removed from all liabilities from that mortgage. But even though the divorce decree said, hey, you've got 6 months to refinance, well, what if they can't qualify? You can put anything you want to in a divorce decree, but if they can't qualify, they can't qualify. But they did work it out together that they worked it out where they kept that house, but it was 3 years later. So once again, we put together jigsaw puzzles every single day as realtors and lenders, brokers, and we put together a jigsaw puzzle with 1,000 pieces, but we don't have the box top. And it's just by communicating and talking to each other that we found out how to put all these pieces together and make the puzzle work by the end of the day. So Chris, that was a good point. And Becky, thank you. That's one piece I forgot. So Doug, thank you.
Alan, I'd like to call on Janie. I think she had a question.
Oh, Janie,
earlier.
yeah.
Janie?
It subsequently got answered with all of the back and forth. So that was kind of going to be my interjection was, what if
Yes.
they can't qualify and you can't get off? I mean, I just, in my mind, I would say, no, don't do that. Don't you dare let somebody pay the mortgage and you trust them. And so that's very good information. So thank you.
Yep. Yeah, it is. It's got to be a trusting thing because most people, they want to be completely free and clear. But when there's kids involved, they want to stay in the same school district, same church, whatever. The big point of this is, as long as you talk about it, many times there are options. The house is on fire and you're standing in your den looking at the front door and the front door's locked and you can't get out because the front door's locked and the house is on fire and you're about to go down. The door's locked. We can't get out. We cannot get out of the house. And my wife and my kids, and we're about to all die. The door's locked. And many times that's all somebody's going to tell you, well, the door's locked. You can't get out. But what we are going to do is say, well, what about the kitchen door? What about the garage door? What about the back door? What about the 2 doors in the basement? What about the 6 windows upstairs? What about going out the chimney like Santa Claus? I don't want to hear no. I want to hear no, but let's talk out 4, 5, or 6 other potential options. That is the magic of what we do together as the realtors, lenders, and reaching out to Doug to say, we have a situation. How do we solve a real estate problem? And how do we help a family in the process? So that's a great point. And sometimes there's options, but you don't know till you start asking questions and keep going deeper and deeper. And then sometimes you can find out 3 days later, we have a solution totally unheard of, but that's where being creative and having done this so long, knowing how to navigate through this stuff. Yep.
So,
Anything?
Doug, I really liked your interjection about how you can make a deal with the other attorney and have that document held by them until all signatures are in, just to make the other party feel comfortable. Because everybody's emotions are high
Yep.
in a situation like that. So just even you offering that, I've been in a situation before where the other attorney did not offer that. So, I mean, you already took it from a level 10 down to normal by saying, hey, we'll let your attorney hold this document until everything's done. So that was great.
Fortunately, a lot of times, parties, I'm viewed as a neutral third party. Each divorce attorney has a client. I'm not representing the husband or the wife in the divorce. I'm a real estate attorney, and I'm helping both of them because presumably this sale is to both of their best interests. So in most cases, they get comfortable saying, okay, you don't represent either side. You're the neutral third party. But if I have to work something out with a divorce attorney, I'll say it's been done before.
Right.
I'll tell you the other thing that we were able to work out. It was a situation Alan touched on where the property ultimately would go into foreclosure if they couldn't get it sold, but they didn't have it worked out who was going to get what. And ultimately, what they elected to do was to sell the property with all of the proceeds paid into the escrow, either escrow of the court or to the escrow of one of the divorce attorneys. And they said, let's just get the property sold. Let's stop the bleeding. And then we can fight over the rest of the money later. If we wait, we're not going to have anything left to fight about.
Yep. And this goes back to the team aspect. The more people you put into the equation, the more complicated it's going to be. So if I'm able to do both transactions, I know exactly what's happening on both sides of the table. Can they qualify? How do we work it out? We know that process there, which also means I can control to say, we're closing both of these transactions at Doug's office. So Doug is going to be the neutral third party, but we don't have to worry about dealing with two different law firms. And you'd like to think that they're all good and they're easy to work with and communicate, but that is not the case. Same thing when there's a realtor involved. If they're selling the home and one's going to go buy another house, or they sell the house and each one buys a house, ideally, you are the one realtor for both of them. When you bring other people in, all of a sudden it starts complicating things. That's why the whole team aspect of everybody working together, because our job is to help them transition through this as smooth as possible. And I just know the more I can control who's touching this, the better it's going to be for everybody in the transaction. Does that make sense for that?
Yeah. Absolutely. It's our goal.
That's right. That's right.
Any final comment, or first, any final questions? And if not, Alan, any final comments?
If I can help in any way, reach out. You've got my contact info. I do a lot. I'm on pretty much all the social media channels. Most of my stuff is on my Facebook page to find out more about me just as an individual person. And then as far as the business goes. But once again, anything related to this, and actually with anything, the number one thing, the very first thing somebody needs to do is get your financial house in order before you list a house, before you start looking at houses, before you do anything. What can you do? Let's figure that out first. And then step 2 is talking about selling a house, looking for a house. And that's where the team aspect works out together.
All right. Well, first, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us and attending today. One of my favorite quotes is from the great philosopher Kenny Rogers in his song, The Gambler, and that is, I hope you found an ace that you can keep. So appreciate you joining us today and hope you get value out of our time together. And a special word of thanks to Alan for being our guest speaker, guest host today on our Business Builder Speaker Series. We appreciate him taking the time and sharing his thoughts, wisdom, and insight.
Awesome. Thank you. Honored to be here. Appreciate y'all.
Now,
Thanks, guys.
we will clean up,
Thank you.
like I said, we'll save the video. And in a week or two, everyone will get a follow-up email with a link not only to this video, but you'll be able to go to the library of all of our other Business Builder Speaker series. If you find a topic that interests you, you'll be able to peruse the library and view some of our other sessions with some of our other guest speakers.
Awesome. Thank you, Doug. Honored to be here.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. Let Alan and I know how we can help you with your real estate transactions. We appreciate you.
Have a great day. See y'all.